Say that.
Now, I'm here till 1 o'clock, but you have to participate. Otherwise, it isn't a university. It's just a monologue. And whilst monologues are my strong suit, it wouldn't be right to have a 3-hour monologue now, would it? That's why we bring up guests who are, on the face of it, incompatible with me and with my views. They don't get much more incompatible than Rod Liddle, or at least that used to be true, to the discomfort of him and of me and of readers and supporters of both of us. Not only do we agree on the government's response to the Salisbury affair, according to Rod Liddle's stunning new commentary in The Spectator magazine, but on one or two other things too. Is it that we're getting old? Are the old left-right lines beginning to be erased through the constant crossing over of people on issue to issue? I'll be talking about that bigger question as well as the narrower one of the Skripal affair to Rod Liddle in the second hour. But I'll give you a preview of what Rod Liddle says about the Skripal affair, and it's a word that came up yesterday. It's petulant. It's shrill. It's an act of self-harm. Nobody can dispute that in their hearts. Neither Parliament, nor people, nor a single journalist in any newspaper, on any television station, on any radio station, has yet seen a single piece of evidence that the government's narrative on Salisbury is actually true. The people, the Parliament, the journalists are being asked to take the word of Theresa May and Boris Johnson. Now, you bah if you like, but I will not be a sheep. And I will not encourage others to be sheep either. And the least sheep-like amongst us ought to be our members of Parliament, whose professional, vocational duty it is to be sceptical, to test, to scrutinize, to intellectually exercise those advancing propositions and solutions to our country's problems. I just made that up, but if you force me to define the constitutional duty of a Member of Parliament, that's probably something like what I'd come up with. In fact, we can call it the Galloway Doctrine, if you like. Second only to parliamentarians in that duty, surely, is anyone with any pride in calling themselves a journalist. For example, it has clearly just been done in this studio 10 minutes ago, sought to imply to the listener, the reader, the viewer, that the EU has recalled its ambassador to Russia. Well, up to a point, Lord Copper. What that means is they've asked the ambassador to Russia to come back to Brussels and tell them what's going on. But that's not the implication that was given to you, is it? The implication that was given to you that this act meant a withdrawal of the EU ambassador in Brussels, and in course meant that the EU was agreeing and accepting, to use Theresa May's words, with the British government on Russia. But they're not. President Macron next month will make a state visit to Moscow and pose for pictures with President Putin. President Trump, President Tusk, Chancellor Merkel, President Macron, I could go on, believe me. An alphabet soup of our quote-unquote allies congratulated Putin on his re-election on Sunday and looked forward to working closely with him. The truth is, despite the bluster and despite the fog of misinformation, disinformation in the British media, Britain is isolating itself in relation to the Skripal affair. Now, the Russians might have done it. Even more likely, Russians, not the Russians, but Russians might have done it. It's quite possible that countries of the former Soviet Union, where the nerve agents were actually made, could have done it. Actually, anybody could have done it. If you look at the results of the tests published this morning, the tests conducted by the British hospital on the Skripal pair, it concludes that it was likely the result of a nerve agent attack like Novichok, or, emphasis, my emphasis, a related product. Now, given that anybody can produce Novichoks, in fact, don't do it, but if you Google it right now, you can find out how. Given that anybody could have, therefore anybody might have. But as a result of today's tests, we know that we don't know that it was a Novichok. It might be a related kind of nerve agent, thus widening still further. Now, as I've said all week, I'm not saying the Russians aren't bad enough to have committed this crime. My case is that they are not mad enough. For all the reasons I have adumbrated in print, on television, on radio, ever since the affair began. But I want to say, as Rod Liddle does in The Spectator, the idea that just because, for whatever reason, and I frankly cannot fathom the reason, you leap to a conclusion which inevitably will put you on a collision path with a big, powerful country like Russia, the idea that you should expect other people to leap with you. Most people think, you know, that you should look before you leap. And I'm looking at a story in the Daily Mail. And as I was reading it, 2 pigs flew past the window. The number of Britons living in absolute poverty falls by 1 million since the credit crunch slump, whilst middle-class incomes have grown the most, new figures reveal. The number of children in Britain in absolute poverty has fallen under the Tories, under David Cameron and Theresa May. Hallelujah. If you believe that, I've got a bridge down here in London that I can sell you. And we'll be talking about the blacklist. You see, it's bad enough that employers keep blacklists of employees that might just stand up for themselves and encourage others to do the same. It's even worse when private organizations set themselves up, take money from employers for providing blacklists, for spying on people, monitoring them long before the age of Facebook, and keeping potential employers fully appraised of which bricklayer, electrician, glazier, plumber ought not to be employed because you won't be able to push them around quite enough. But how bad is it that yesterday the Metropolitan Police themselves acknowledged that they were illegally supplying these private companies drawing up blacklists? The allegation, says the Scotland Yard team looking at it, is proven. Scotland Yard has admitted that special branch officers passed information illegally to a controversial network that blacklisted construction workers. Well, I was very kind about the Metropolitan Police the other day. Can't tell you how dismal that reading is. Let's hope it's not still happening, yeah, fellas?